So you've clicked on this video after reading the title, and you're probably thinking to yourself, who the hell is this guy, and what right does he have telling me why Halo 4 is a bad game? Well, my name is Ren, and I've pretty much been playing Halo games for my entire life. I spent my entire childhood with the Halo series. I got the original Xbox on Christmas of 2001, and from that point onward, my family consisted of my dad, my mom, my second daddy Master Chief, and my dog. Ever since then, I have spent literally weeks of my life playing the Halo games. I've gotten every single achievement across every single Halo title, and I'm currently doing it all over again in the Master Chief Collection. Now, I have played literally hundreds of video games in my time, and I have learned a lot about them over the years. But no other video game out there has really grabbed me quite like Halo has. And because of this, I'd like to think that I am more than qualified to know what goes into making a good game, but more importantly, what goes into making a good Halo game. This is a video that I've been wanting to make for several years now, and please keep in mind that for most of this video, I'm going to try and be as objective as possible, and my goal for this video is to hopefully bring to light the huge errors that 343 have made with this game, and with the franchise, and hopefully things that you yourself have never caught on to. Because I've done extensive research throughout all of the Halo games, specifically for this video. And I'd like to think that I have a somewhat unique thought process when it comes to analyzing video games. And hopefully at some point in this video, you'll have changed your mind on how you feel about Halo 4, and maybe a little bit about how you feel about the Master Chief Collection. And to top it all off, I've also got some predictions about Halo 5 that I think are going to be pretty spot on. But really what I want is for someone at 343 Industries to see this video, because I want Halo to go back to being great. And yeah, I know, Halo will never be as good as it used to be. But as it is right now, it needs a lot of work. Because the truth is, baby, Halo 4 is the worst Halo of all time. So let's start at the beginning, shall we? Remember that E3 teaser trailer of Halo 4 back in 2011? It's a pretty awesome trailer. And everyone, including myself, was surprised to see that they're even making a Halo 4. Up until that point, I think that just about everybody had come to terms with the idea that the Master Chief saga was pretty much over. And as a diehard fan of the series, sure, I thought that was sad, but at the same time you realize that things need to end, you know? Nothing can go on forever. Halo had ran its course, and it was glorious. But after seeing that trailer, I was actually pretty excited for Halo 4. I mean, how could I not be? It was more Halo. In fact, I even bought the special edition, which cost me 100 real-life human dollars. I remember coming home after the midnight release, popped the game into my Xbox, and at first, I thought I actually enjoyed the game, but I was in denial. I played it so much, trying to really love it, but I just couldn't. So right off the bat, as soon as you start up the campaign, we got problems. The game starts off here with this cutscene where Dr. Halsey has been arrested because the Spartan program she created was inhumane, since she was basically taking kids and turning them into emotionless super soldiers by stripping them of their humanity. Now give me a fucking break. Are we seriously supposed to believe that they'd even give a second thought to arresting Halsey? Because of the Spartan program, the Master Chief saved the galaxy several times over. She should at the very least get a free pass for that, don't you think? And let's not forget that the Spartan program was a government-funded program. You're seriously gonna try and sit there and convince me that there wasn't a single person in all of the UNSC that didn't know about what was going on in the Spartan program throughout the entire 20 to 30 years it was operational? Give me a goddamn break. And don't get me wrong, I can see what 343 are trying to do with this. They're trying to flip the whole storyline on its ear, trying to change your expectations on who the Master Chief is, trying to humanize him so they can give him more character. I'll go more in depth later about how they ruin Master Chief's character, so let's move on with this story a little more. The story in this game is so forced. It's easily, without a doubt, the weakest in the entire series. Basically, Cortana wakes Master Chief from his cryosleep, then they crash onto a Forerunner planet, accidentally awaken a new race known as the Prometheans, along with their leader, the Didact. Then a UNS... Fuck. Then a UNSC ship also crashes on the planet, and they're also trying to escape the planet. Then they escape the planet. Then they gotta stop the Didact because he's trying to destroy humanity for reasons that aren't really explained very well in the game. Meanwhile, throughout all of this, Cortana is going through rampancy, which I'll expand on a bit later. But there really isn't a whole lot going on through the story, and the stakes don't feel very high at all. That paragraph that I just read out loud to you, that's the entirety of the story to Halo 4. And it's just full of problems. I mean, first of all, I really don't understand the Didact character. We're told almost nothing about him. They only kind of briefly talk about him in a really boring cutscene. And the whole story sort of sets him out to be this ultimate badass. But he doesn't really do anything except fly around in his little ball and use telekinesis on the Chief. Which also doesn't really make any sense. Why doesn't he just squish Master Chief? Or throw him headfirst into a wall? Why doesn't he just drop Master Chief into the space lava down below? It seems like he could kill Master Chief so easily. So why doesn't he just do it? Also, how and why does he have telekinesis? None of the other Promethean enemies in the game have telekinesis. So to find out, I did some digging around, and according to a comment that I found on Reddit, apparently the Forerunners can manipulate constraint fields, and that's how he's able to lift up the Chief. So take from that what you will. But from what I understand, supposedly the Didact's character is explained a lot more in some of the Halo books. But no one should have to read the books to fully understand the story of the video game. You didn't have to read any of the books to fully understand and enjoy any of the other Halo games. 343 are just trying to sell us more books because they're bastards. The game should have its own self-contained story, and it's just unoriginal and unnecessary to have to stick to the lore from the books anyway, especially since Bungie themselves actively went against the events that occur in the Fall of Reach book in the Halo Reach campaign. And some of those Halo books are just so convoluted and outrageously boring. I had to force myself to read their synopsis just for the purpose of this video. I seriously can't imagine myself sitting there and reading hundreds and hundreds of pages of this crap. But hey, if you're interested in the wacky adventures of your favorite classic Halo characters, you know the ones. Who doesn't love Bornstellar? Then you got Morning Riser, my boy, and then my personal favorite, Chakar. If you love those wacky characters, then you'll feel right at home when you curl up and read this bad boy next to the fireplace. And I understand that quite some time ago, Bungie had created what is known as the Halo Bible, which has everything that has ever happened in the Halo universe written inside of it, as well as everything that will supposedly happen in the future, which is possibly what 343 pulled from when they came up for the story for this game. But I really have a hard time believing that Jason Jones or Joe Staten or anyone else at Bungie came up with any of this crap. And if they did, they certainly wouldn't have made a game out of it. Even so, 343 didn't have to follow exactly what was written in the Halo Bible. They certainly didn't seem to have any trouble changing everything else about Halo. Speaking of changing everything, I really hate what they've done with Cortana, both visually and as a character. Now, do me a favor here and take a quick look at Cortana here throughout all the Halos. Now, I get that she's going to look a little bit different in each game, because, you know, as technology progresses, she'll get more and more detail added to her in each new game, but in this she looks drastically different from any of her predecessors. I mean, look at her appearance. They gave her Hollywood Botoxed lips, saggy flingers, an hourglass waist, and two big firm ass cheeks. Now, I understand that they based her face and body off of the mocap actress that portrayed her, but guess what? This chick here looks nothing like Cortana. So why did you do that, 343? You already had an existing look to go off of. She already had her own signature face. So why did you put someone else's face on her face? And I seriously don't get why they tried to make her look sexy. It makes zero sense to me. She's a purple AI robot lady. She doesn't need to look sexy. I mean, she really wasn't very sexy in the other 3 games. So why did you do this? You just want to give 10-year-old kids boners or something, 343? You enjoy 10-year-olds' boners, you sick fucks? Yeah, I bet you do. And apart from being sexist, they also just flat out ruined Cortana's character. Throughout this storyline, she's going through rampancy, which is a thing that happens to all AIs after 7 years, which basically makes them implode due to all the data they've gathered throughout their entire lifetime. This causes Cortana to just whine about her problems throughout the campaign. And really all this does is just make her seem kinda bitchy. I mean, look at this.
I will not allow you to leave this planet!
Cortana.
I didn't mean to do that.
What are you waiting for? That station's not gonna save itself.
Do you know what that condescending bitch said to me after our first game of chess?
Cortana, correct your approach.
Yes, well, he also said he works better alone.
I can see why you chose him, Catherine.
Cortana,
I'm your greatest achievement and you detest
pull up! Now!
And, you know, in previous Halos, she was always kind of fun. You know, she was always kind of sassy and lighthearted.
Working on it. I'd like to see you crack a 128,000-bit modulating encryption key.
Stay with the Master Chief. He'll know what to do.
Yes, sir, Sergeant.
Thanks for the tank. He never gets me anything.
Oh, I know what the ladies like.
Bet you can't stick it.
You're on.
I feel like the Cortana I've come to know would have fought her rampancy with a bit more dignity. And again, I get what 343 are trying to do here. They're trying to make Cortana seem like a damsel in distress so that you go, oh no, Cortana, I'll save you. But it just feels like they're trying way too hard to make you care about her and want to save her. But because of all these changes they've made to her character and her look, she doesn't even seem like Cortana anymore. She just seems like some random robot lady that's dying. And apart from that, it's even harder to become emotionally invested in her character, since the game has a way of disconnecting you as a player from the game. Now this took me a little while to figure out. I didn't know what it was at first, but one of the reasons I couldn't get attached to Cortana's character, or any of the other characters for that matter, is because during gameplay, the Master Chief actually talks.
If we're going to hijack a ship from these Covenant, we're going to have to find where they're landing first.
I don't suppose you have a plan for that.
We could always ask nicely.
Asking is not my strong suit.
Which to you may not sound like it'd have any sort of effect, but it absolutely does. You see, in the other 3 Halo games, the Chief never talks while you have control of him, which means that when Cortana is talking, she's talking directly to you, the player, which makes you feel more involved in the moment and further immerses you into the story, which allows for tender moments like this to carry real weight and emotion.
Send me out. With a bang.
But in Halo 4, when Cortana is talking to you and the Chief responds to her and talks back, it makes it seem like she's no longer talking to you, the player, but that she is instead talking to the Chief, which in turn detaches you from the game and doesn't allow you to be nearly as immersed as you were in the previous games. It makes it seem more like you're watching the story unfold from the outside, as opposed to feeling like you're an actual part of the story. Because she no longer talks directly to you anymore, it disconnects you as a player from the game world. And when she finally does die, it isn't an emotional moment at all. Nothing of actual importance or weight is said during the scene. The first time I saw it, I actually tried to force myself to get sad during the scene. But the truth is, it just isn't sad at all. In fact, it's just kind of weird.
I've waited so long to do that.
Why would she even care about touching his chest? They make it seem as if Cortana and the Chief are in love, like they want to be together forever and kiss each other and get married and have little purple babies and all that. Now don't get me wrong, I absolutely think that they do love each other, but not in that way, more like in the way that war buddies love each other. You know, like 2 guys who have gone through crazy war stuff together. They're gonna feel a special kind of bond. They're gonna feel like they're brothers, you know? But I can guarantee you that in most cases, they certainly are not gonna want to touch each other's chest and have butt sex with each other after the war is over. This cutscene is terrible. I have a huge problem just with this entire scene in general. Apparently, Cortana was able to manipulate the energy bridge that the Chief was crawling on into a bubble shield in order to protect him from the nuclear bomb that he set off in his own hands. Give me a break. how did that shield protect him from an explosion that happened right under his body? And answer me this. If that shield is able to protect him from the explosion, but also simultaneously trapped him inside the explosion, wouldn't that shield have then absorbed the blast and protected what the Master Chief was trying to destroy in the first place? And also destroy Master Chief in the process? It makes absolutely zero sense. Also, look at this. What is this about? How did Cortana become physical? Is she even physical? She touches the Master Chief's chest right there, so she must be physical, right? Also, how is she even alive right now to do all of this, since the entire structure that the Master Chief implanted her into was just nuked and is now nothing but debris? This entire scene is just baffling. And it's supposed to be one of the most touching, emotional, and pivotal scenes in the entire game. And if there is some sort of explanation for it, it is never explained in the game.
Wait.
And also, I have a huge problem with the Master Chief in this game. One of my most beloved video game characters. And now I have to force myself to like him, because 343 completely ruined him, both aesthetically and characteristically. Now, I know this is just my personal preference, but I really don't like the way his armor looks in this game. It just doesn't look like a set of armor that the Chief would wear. And again, just like Cortana, his armor isn't consistent with how it looked in the previous games. I mean, the suit's color is just so boring. And could someone please explain to me why he now has a completely different looking set of armor, even though he hopped into the cryo tube with this armor at the end of Halo 3, and then suddenly he wakes up in Halo 4 with a completely different set of armor on? He certainly didn't wake up mid-journey to change suits. In fact, he didn't wake up at all.
How long was I out?
4 years, 7 months, 10 days.
Somebody should have found us by now.
So if he never woke up, how did he just magically get a new suit? Did Cortana just undress and redress the hunky and masculine Master Chief like the sexy nurse 343 wants her to be? Even if that were the case, I can guarantee you that there is not a spare set of armor just hanging around on that ship, especially one that is an exact fit for the Master Chief.
For us, it's making him feel like a real person. We have a nude male sculpt, and then from there we sculpt it on physically a tech suit.
And on top of this, guys, when we spend time just doing all the details and trying to add some of that functionality, even little bits here and there like Braille, and this just reads 117.
Okay, that's a nice detail, I guess. But please, answer me this. What blind person is gonna go around feeling his chest? How come the other Spartans in the game don't have Braille on their chest? And how many people are there in the world that can read Braille just by looking at it? I really don't understand why they would put Braille on him, other than to just add more crap onto him just because they can. And as far as the Master Chief's character goes, they just kind of made him seem desperate and concerned. He doesn't seem at all like the Chief we've come to know and love.
Cortana, see if you can raise Tilson. Get me a status on the rest of the station.
I can't believe you did that.
Cortana, I need that info. Look, don't think about the Didad. Don't think about the composer. Only focus on finding me Tilson.
Got her! Biosignature stable on 350 level. B deck.
Thank you, Cortana.
You see, in the previous games, there wasn't much to Master Chief's character, and this was intentional by Bungie. He had just enough character for you to identify with him a little bit, show you he's got a little bit of a soft side, and to show you he's a bit of a cool guy.
Not even the flood can stop it.
Boo.
Because the less you know about his character, the more you as a player are able to feel like you're in his shoes. It allows you to become more immersed into the game. But I totally understand if the whole silent protagonist thing doesn't really work for some people. Like, I love the Half-Life games, I mean, who doesn't? But I couldn't give one hoot about Gordon Freeman, since he has absolutely zero character. I mean, the man never speaks once. But since the characters in that game are talking directly to you, it makes you feel like you're actually Gordon Freeman. But I feel like with the Master Chief, Bungie got it just right.
One of the keys to the success of the story is we didn't pump a lot of time into figuring out who the Master Chief was and why he was a ghost in the shell. We thought he is a husk. He's a big green suit of armor that you move around.
There's something good about having the Master Chief essentially be a blank slate that helps each individual person connect to the character.
And 343 just couldn't seem to understand this.
Master Chief is human. He's not a machine. He's not a set of armor with a big weapon. He's a human with resilience and courage.
I'm sorry, sir, but you are wrong. You say that the Master Chief isn't a machine? Well, I got news for you, baby. He kinda is a machine. You see, the Spartan program's purpose was to basically turn humans into machines in order for them to be better soldiers. Surprised you didn't know that, considering you're working on the Halo game. You know, it just feels so out of character for him to hear him getting so concerned about everything. I understand that in the Halo books there are a lot of inner monologues that the Chief has in his head, and that he's a somewhat conflicted character. But since it's a book, you kinda need that. Because if you wrote a book with the Master Chief as the main character, and you didn't allow the reader to see what was going on in his head, the book would have just been filled with a lot of empty pages. And here's the thing, we're not talking about the books here. We're talking about the games. So forget about the books. Get the books out of here. Because the games already have a well-established, tried and true Master Chief. But here's what I think the problem is. I don't think they should have made another Halo game. At least not one with the Master Chief in it. Or at least not one with the Master Chief as the main character. Because you see, I always felt that with Halo 3, the story had concluded rather nicely. The universe was safe again, and the Master Chief went into cryosleep. I always found that kind of fitting, because he doesn't have much character left to expand on, and his job was done. His life has no more purpose. There's nothing left for him to do now, and sure, that's kind of sad, but that's also why the ending was so good. 343 are trying to change fundamentals that, at the time, had been in place for 11 years, and it just comes off as forced. Make a new character or something. Try something new. Of course I say that. And at the moment, there's an awful lot of buzz going around about this new Agent Locke character.
You don't choose! You don't do that! You don't play God! That's not your right!
Look around. You see God anywhere? Tonight, we are God.
Okay, now I'd like to talk about the campaign itself. Halo 4, without a doubt, has the worst single player in the entire series. Halo 4 is easily the worst. Part of what made the other Halo single player fun was the enemy AI. Each enemy had its own gimmick that forced you to change how you would handle each encounter. I shouldn't have to tell you that grunts are just pawns, almost worthless on the battlefield. They're just put there to be killed. But if you're not too careful, they can overwhelm you and kill you. And jackals are all about precision. You gotta shoot their hand to expose their head. Or you could just throw a grenade at them. And then elites. Elites are the cream of the crop. Some of the smartest enemies I've ever fought in a video game. They try their damnedest to kill you. They flank, they dodge, they hide, they go berserk. They'll even go as far as trying to hop into a gunner seat of a warthog to try and take you down. And when you throw all these enemies together, you get 30 seconds of fun. Great, good, delicious fun. Just about every fight you have with an elite on Legendary mode is fun and tense. Because in some cases, the AI is so good, you're basically fighting against something that is thinking and strategizing just like you are. In Halo 4, the elites are just plain dumb. On Legendary mode, I've seen elites throw their grenades at the ceiling, I've seen elites just sit there and let me shoot at them, and I've seen elites just straight up not know what to do. The elites in Halo 4 are just not fun to fight at all. They're way too easy. Even the elites in Halo 1 had better AI than these tards. So take this for example. In Halo 4, on Legendary, you can kill an elite with 7 shots from a battle rifle. They die way too easily. But in Halo 2 it takes more than that. In fact, it takes 10 shots. The fact that you can kill them so quickly in Halo 4 is inexcusable. It removes the key element of having to strategize against the elite. Usually you gotta use your plasma and human weapons as efficiently as possible to bring down their shields and make sure that their shields stay down at any cost. But when they keel over after just a measly 7 shots and they don't even try to stay alive and they hardly try to take you down, they just become trivial and redundant. And I hate the way the grunts sound in this game. They just sound annoying. There's nothing comical or whimsical about the sounds they make. I mean, listen to this. But you know, sometimes I think that 343 intentionally made the elites dumber in order to make their new enemies, the Prometheans, seem tougher than they actually are. You see, the Prometheans have 3 different enemy types. You got the crawlers, which are basically just Promethean grunts. They're pretty much dogs that you shoot in the head. They don't do anything special really except crawl. Then you got knights, which are really pretty similar to elites. They have shields that you need to take down, and once the shields are down, you just shoot them in the head. The only real difference is they can teleport away. But with that being said, the knights are probably the toughest enemies of the game. And then you got the watchers, which are basically just glorified sentinels. Except they can do a little more. They can put a shield up in front of the knights or the crawlers. They can bring knights and crawlers back to life, and they can throw your grenades straight back at you.
For us, it was important to get it into something that people could relate to, which I think is always going to be a challenge when trying to take the foreigner language and create a character.
Making sure that his head stood out, that you could see it, that players had the ability to headshot it.
Now, I disagree with that completely. You don't need to be able to headshot every enemy in the game. I mean, the hunters can't be shot in the head, and they're still tons of fun to fight. Why not change it up? Put their weak spot on their stomach or something, you know, like the Vex. Or put something on them that you can shoot off of them to prevent them from teleporting or regaining shields. Or at least do something that makes them stand out from the rest of the enemies in the series. Something that'll make you have to change the way you would handle each encounter with them. Because almost every enemy throughout the entire game series can be dealt with by shooting them in the head, so do something different. Even though the knights are the toughest enemies in the game, they still aren't very difficult to fight. They're just kind of cheap, really. I mean, when they're almost dead, they usually just teleport away. And there doesn't really seem to be a limit on how far away they can teleport. And it's not always clear exactly where they've teleported to. And on top of that, their shields regenerate as they teleport. They're just a nuisance, and there really isn't anything fun about fighting them. They're really not that much different from fighting an elite, especially since the knights have the same weaknesses as an elite does. It's pretty sad that the biggest and baddest enemies in the entire galaxy can be taken out with a noob combo.
One of the big focuses for us in the design of the Forerunners was to have these different enemy classes that would be able to work together.
Having this dissection so that when the player went into combat, he's sort of tactically evaluating which order to take guys out.
Okay, hold on a second here, Mr. King. How can you be so wrong about a game that you've created? Are you delusional? Now, I get that part of the purpose of this video here was to make people excited for the game, but answer me this. Why wouldn't the first enemy I try to kill be the Watcher? You know, the enemy that's just floating in the air with no cover. The thing that can give the toughest enemy in the entire game a shield. The thing that can throw my own grenades back at me. The thing that can sometimes spawn in additional enemies. And most importantly, the thing that can bring the toughest enemy in the game back to life after I've killed it. Please tell me why would I kill a knight first? So that it can just be brought back to life for me to kill again. Why would anybody want to do that to themselves? Because I'd really like to know. What's that? What's that, Chris? You got nothing for me? Yeah, that's what I thought. Have you ever played Halo 4?
Halo 4? I think I played it like at a friend's house. I have a PlayStation, so I didn't get to play it. I played Halo 3 though.
Did you like Halo 4?
I liked it enough. I started playing Halo in Halo 3 though, so I was like.
You wanna know what I thought about Halo 4?
Sure.
2 words.
Didn't like it that much, huh?
Guys, right in Halo 4. The level design for this game is incredibly linear. Now don't get me wrong, the Halo games have always been pretty linear, but a lot of the time you had more than one way to get to where you were going. Or you'd have an alternate path which could drastically change the way you'd handle the encounter. Or sometimes you'll just be in a huge open space where there's a big fight taking place, where Marines and Covenant are just duking it out. And it just feels like you're in the middle of this huge battle. But in Halo 4, all you ever do is follow one strict path. There's almost no variations on the path. You can't really stray off of it. There's no exploration. In fact, all of the game's 7 collectibles are barely hidden since there's almost nowhere to put them. Like, take a look at this one. You're supposed to go that way, but the terminal is just right there. And right here, you're supposed to go this way, but the terminal is just right here. And for the other 5, you gotta go that way, and the terminal's just right here. You see, none of them are hidden very well. Whereas in Halo 3, you really had to sleuth around to find all those skulls and terminals.
We're not just on a Halo, we're on a whole planet now.
Exactly. You're on an entire planet now. So the levels should be much more open and expansive. But even the vehicle sections are completely linear. Now look at this section of gameplay, for example. You hop into a tank and you just shoot everything that comes into sight while you follow the strict linear path. And then later, you get into a Mantis and do the exact same thing over again. Then, you get to a huge open area where there should be a big battle taking place. But instead, all you do is shoot Phantoms and Banshees alongside a couple of big gun turrets. There's no magic or grandeur to it. It's just kind of boring and flaccid. Later on, there is one level where there's sort of this big open battle taking place between Marines and Covenant, but it isn't really necessary for you to finish the fight, or even engage in the fight. You can just skip the encounter in its entirety. In Halo 3, that shit would not fly. You remember the Storm level, where you had to destroy a bunch of Covenant vehicles, and you had so many different options to do it the way you wanted to do it. You could hop on a missile turret, or you could grab a mongoose and drive a Marine around and have him rocket everything, or if you wanted to, you could even grab a ghost and do it all yourself. Whatever you wanted to do, baby, you could do it. And apart from all the choices you have, there's also Marines just driving mongoose all over the battlefield, there's Banshees and Hornets duking it out in the background, and it just feels like you're a part of an even bigger fight. Like there's more going on within the game's universe than just what you and Cortana are doing. And to finish that sequence off, you gotta jump onto a Scarab and destroy it, and then jump off before it explodes and kills you. And that's just such a fun moment in the game. But in this, you can just grab a ghost or a warthog, destroy 2 shield generators, and go to the objective, which is conveniently right around the corner. That's not fun at all. And the next level after that, Reclaimer, is simply inexcusable. You spend 75% of the mission just standing on top of an oversized elephant while it slowly drives you to your next objective while people are talking to you. It is quite possibly the most boring level of any Halo game. And then the level after that finally allows you to be able to control a Pelican for the first time ever in a Halo game. And ever since I was a little boy, I always wanted to pilot the Pelican. And funnily enough, this was the exact moment when I finally realized that I didn't like this game. The Pelican isn't fun to fly at all. It handles exactly like the Falcon from Halo Reach. They literally just copy and pasted the control scheme of the Falcon over to the Pelican. It's a pretty big deal to finally be able to fly the Pelican, so you'd think they'd try and make flying it feel special, you know? Try to make you think like, oh yeah, this thing is awesome. How come we never got to fly one before? But instead it's just like, oh, so this is why Bungie never let us fly a Pelican before. Because it's not fun. And even if the Pelican were fun to fly, there's almost no point in flying it really because of how basic the level layout is. It's literally just a straight line to 3 separate objectives. There's nothing else there on that map. It's just a gigantic empty space. There's nothing else to go to, and there's nothing else to see. In fact, if you try to go anywhere else other than the objectives, the game just kills you. It's almost as if they made this level just as a poor excuse to be able to fly the Pelican around. They had a chance to do something really cool here, something really special, but this just isn't special at all. It's just really incredibly bland. And that's just sad. Also, why did you even bother making it a Pelican at all if you're not going to bother to change the control scheme from the Falcon? You could have just given us a Falcon or Hornet, and that would have been that. You wouldn't have had to ruin Pelicans on top of everything else you've ruined. Or did you think no one would notice? And if you want to talk about linear, this section here at the beginning of the last level has you flying a ship just right on down a straight path. It's an on-rails segment, which are never very fun. And the hit detection here is terrible. You can clearly see that I didn't touch the wall or anything, but it still blew me up. I still died. And that's just sloppy. And speaking of sloppy, some of the voice work in this game is pretty questionable.
I swear, just once it would be nice to have an assignment that doesn't end in people shooting at the science team.
The Covenant just wasted one of the security teams. What chance do a bunch of archaeologists have?
Spartan, are you all right? It sounds like the end of the world out there.
In fact, this old lady character here, Dr. Tilson, she kind of cracks me up. She seems very comical, but I don't think that was intentional on their part. I mean, look at her. She looks like she's going for laughs. Is it just me? Am I crazy here? I don't know, but the final boss of the game was a total joke. There's nothing cheaper than killing what is supposed to be the biggest and baddest enemy of the game in a simple QuickTime event. The whole game was building him up throughout the entire story, and for the epic climactic final showdown, all you do is hold left thumbstick forward, hit left trigger, and boom, your boss is dead. How riveting. Now admittedly, Halo 2's final boss, Tartarus, wasn't really a very good boss battle, but at least you were able to fight him. And then, to finish everything off, 343 did the unthinkable and showed us Master Chief's face. Now this genuinely pisses me off. This is the worst possible decision they ever could have made. Sure, yeah, it only shows a third of his face, but I don't want to see his fucking face at all. I don't want to see the back of his head. I don't want to know what color he is. I don't want to know what gender he is. I don't want to see any part of him. It completely destroys the purpose of his character. Destroys everything about him Bungie has built up to this point. It's like if at the end of V for Vendetta, V took off his mask and showed his face to everybody. But they would never do that because that's just fucking stupid. There was a reason Bungie never showed his face before. So what do you think gives you the right to do that? To just take the huge liberty of showing that to us? You can't show his face. It's the rules. It's like 343 just did whatever they thought the fans wanted. But no one really wants to see his face. Because after 11 years, everyone had built up their own personal perspective of what he looked like. At this point, all showing his face would do is disappoint everyone. I understand that 343 wanted to make their game different so that it stands out. And Armando here hit the nail on the head when he said this.
We're listening to the fan feedback. We're incrementally evolving different aspects of the game design, but there's nothing really revolutionary. And I think that's important, because I think really good design is evolutionary, not revolutionary.
But the thing is, they didn't really evolve anything. They just changed everything. They changed so much to where it doesn't even feel like a Halo game anymore. I'm not the only one who has a hard time considering Halo 4 to be a real, actual Halo game. Sure, it's got Halo on the surface. You got the Chief, you got Cortana, you got the Covenant and all that stuff. But beneath the surface, there's nothing there that feels like Halo. It just doesn't have that same spark. That same special something that Bungie puts into their games. And I'm not much of a fan of Halo Reach, but even that game felt like a proper Halo game. Halo 4 just kind of feels like a generic sci-fi game with a generic sci-fi story. And there's really nothing special about it. And nothing can prove that more than this video.
If there's one thing everybody knows about me, it's that I can't fucking stand Halo games. I just don't fucking like them. So I was not looking forward to Halo 4, but to my surprise, this game's actually pretty fucking good. I don't know what happened here, but yeah, this game's pretty fucking sweet.
If you look hard enough on the internet, or probably even in the comments section underneath this video, you'll see a lot of people say that they never used to like Halo games at all, but that they really enjoyed Halo 4. And to me, that says that 343 tried to make a game that would appeal to everybody, rather than a game that would appeal to Halo fans. And the music, while it is serviceable, just doesn't feel like Halo. When Marty O'Donnell was told to make the music for the first Halo game, all he was given to go off of were these 3 words.
I asked Joe, all right, what's the emotional tone? What's the story we're trying to tell? And he goes, I don't know, but it needs to be ancient, epic, and mysterious. I'm like, okay, ancient, epic, mysterious.
I understand that if you have a different person making the music now, that it'll sound different, and that's fine. But tell me, what is it about this song here that sounds epic, ancient, or mysterious? Nothing. If I had to describe this song in 3 words, I'd describe it as tribal, generic, and Battlestar. And this next song doesn't even sound like Halo. In fact, it sounds like something straight out of a Transformers movie. And this is probably an unfair criticism from me, because I know that it must be incredibly difficult to emulate Marty O'Donnell's score, because he's composed some of the most iconic video game soundtracks of all time. But Neil DeVige's score here doesn't even come close to what Halo sounds like. It's just a typical generic sci-fi soundtrack. I mean, can you imagine 10 years from now being able to vividly remember a song from Halo 4's soundtrack? I bet that you won't. I mean, I can't even remember one song from the entire game, and I just beat it the other day. And don't get me wrong, there were a couple of gameplay sections in the game that I did enjoy. Like this one right here. You get in a ghost and you gotta escape, and it's blowing up around you. It was pretty cool. It harkened back to some of my favorite levels from previous Halo games, like the Maw or the final level of Halo 3. But I kind of have a soft spot for gameplay segments when you're trying to escape a structure that's being destroyed around you. I also like this part here, how you can just eject these guys right back out into space. That's pretty satisfying. That's a neat little detail that they didn't have to add in, and that's nice. I appreciate it. And this part here at the end of the first level, I thought it was pretty cool the first time I saw it, but yeah, that's pretty much it. That's basically all I enjoyed of Halo 4.
What did he do?
He asked me how I liked Halo 4, and I was like, oh, I like Halo 3 better. He's like, let me give you 2 words about Halo 4, and then he did that.
Did what?
He
He was like putting his fingers in his throat.
He shoved his fingers down his throat, and I think the first 2 were jokes, and then he actually I think he threw up in his hand a little bit. Because I looked at his fingers, and I was like, that's fucking gross, man. Like, Jesus Christ. I was just looking away, oh, look at these games.
Yeah, that was awkward.